Welcome to Rates and Barrels. It's Tuesday, April 25th, and because it's Tuesday, it is a Project Prospect episode. Derek Van Riper, Eno Saris, Chris Welsh here with you, digging into some recent debuts, recalls, demotions. We have mailbag questions, a lot of ground to cover over the next 45 minutes, maybe even up to 60 minutes. It's going to put off my laundry problem a little longer, but I think I can make that sacrifice for the good of the podcast. Clearly, the laundry wasn't that important this weekend because it's Tuesday and the basket is overflowing. Let's get to some recent news. Logan T. Allen, in some places, made his debut on Sunday for the Guardians, got the win, allowed just one run on 5 hits over 6 innings against the Marlins, and racked up 8 strikeouts while doing it. And it's the beginning of what looks like a wave of Guardians pitching prospects. Welsh, got to give you some credit. You said Logan Allen ahead of Tanner Bibee as far as the opportunity goes. It happened, and he pitched really well his first time out.
Yeah, well, thank you for the credit. We saw credit back to Stuff Plus that, Logan Allen was one of the guys in the very, very first onsets that popped in the Stuff Plus. And I think it kind of probably was going to give us, at least I took it as it, and this is a credit to Eno again, take it as an insight that a lot of these teams that are analytically driven are going to pay attention to some of that stuff. And, he was already popping. Also a lefty, I think, is something that they'd like to see in that rotation. And he did the call. 17 whiffs in that start. His fastball was on point. He had a 42% whiff rate on his splitter, which he was throwing, and a 33% CSW. He was throwing strikes. He was going deep into the game. He was getting strikeouts. This is exactly what they want. And like you said, we might walk into May with a prospect rotation that outdoes a veteran rotation in Cleveland. And I don't think that's anything any of us would have thought. Like, I thought Tanner Bibee preseason was the guy that we could see early on. I never thought Peyton Battenfield, and he was number one. And Logan Allen obviously came up and really dominated. And I think all of these guys have made cases to keep into the rotation. Obviously, though, Tanner Bibee is not quite yet, though it looks like we're going to be seeing him very, very soon.
Yeah, most likely it's going to be Wednesday. We just found out that he's been scratched from his scheduled start at AAA on Tuesday. The Guardians need a starter against the Rockies on Wednesday with all the injuries piling up. So Bibee likely coming up. By the time people hear this podcast, the news should be official. This doesn't count as our one that we talk about and then it happens as a surprise. That comes later in the show. And even the three of us, we don't even know who that's going to be.
We got to be dismissive about somebody. That's like, we have to be dismissive about a prospect and be like, I don't think this is going to really work out. And then that guy's going to get called up immediately after the show.
Guaranteed. But, as far as the model goes with Tanner Bibee, how does he stack up to Allen and the other Guardians options for this rotation?
Yeah, the interesting thing about Bibee is that he, in fact, had overtaken Logan Allen in the AAA Stuff Plus race. That is currently being won and probably will be won by Mason Miller because he's already up and they're not going to spend any more bullets in AAA. The updated chart is Miller, Bradley, Burrows, Riley Thompson, Simeon Woods Richardson, Grayson Rodriguez, Kyle Harrison, Elvin Rodriguez. Let me just remind you, if you've not picked him up in your deeper leagues, you should. He is killing it for the Rays. They picked him up from the Tigers and he looks really good. Then Tanner Bibee at 9. There were some foibles here. There was another player I think we talked about on the cast that we were just like, this guy's not actually good. So why is he number 1? I forget the guy. He was in the Giants organization or something. So it turned out that
was it Luis Palacios?
Yes, Luis Palacios, okay. I think. And they were calling all of his fastballs changeups.
Oh,
in the minor leagues. And they don't spend as much time on minor league pitch classifications getting it right. And so I think it's kind of interesting to think that there could be other people on there. Right now there's a guy named Jose Chacin who's in the top 15, and I don't know that I believe it. There's none of the numbers say it. We got 48 pitches in there. I got to figure out what pitches he actually throws, because if you call the fastball a changeup, then the model doesn't know what to define all the pitches off of. And then it says, oh, I guess the slider is the fastball and the changeup is, you're defining it off the slider. So then it might look good. Then it might look like, oh, this guy's crazy good. And that is not the case. So I think for these top prospects, I can believe it mostly. And so Bibee, I'm into. The model says he's got his fastball is his best pitch by Stuff Plus, which is something I always like to see. And then his slider and changeup are both good, and his curveball is not good, says the model. So it'd be interesting to see what his pitch mix is when he gets to the big leagues. One last note about Logan Allen I find fascinating is that he threw splitters, and it's very rare to have a lefty throw splitters. And that is not something that's happened a lot in the past. And I think it's because of two things. One, lefties are often lower slot. I don't know why that is, but that's what I've seen. And if you were a lower slot, like a side armor can't throw a splitter. It's just, it doesn't work. And the other part is lefties see more righties than righties see lefties. And so you would maybe want a changeup with high platoon splits if you were a lefty. You would want to get righties out with it specifically, where a splitter actually has kind of neutral platoon splits. So Allen is out here finding success with a more neutral platoon split changeup. The thing that I think ultimately is the answer to why Logan Allen can throw so many splitters is that the line between a splitter and a changeup has never been more gray. I think there's Fosh's, there's circle change. Like if you just take a ball and make a circle change, oh, well, look what it's doing. It's coming off the middle. What if you if you push that a little bit further? Oh, that's a Vulcan, you know? And then, instead of doing a full circle, you go, if you kind of go backwards off of that. Yeah, so that's the full circle. But then if you kind of make the circle smaller and smaller, you start getting a Vulcan because you're splitting those two fingers, right? That's come
on, DVR, get your cup, and we're all.
But if you take the circle, if you take the circle and then put it back up on the ball, you got a split finger. You know, so it's all just like one sequence, one sort of, spectrum from circle to full fork or whatever. And
didn't we talk about that with Gavin Stone, where you were pretty sure like that changeup was more of like a splitter at the end of the day, that it was like split, like that was one of those guys I felt like we talked about early on, that
maybe the model would like it better if it was a splitter. I don't think with secondaries it's as big a deal if it calls it a curve and it's not a curve, or it's a slider, or it's a splitter instead of a changeup. Maybe I don't think it's that much of a big deal as calling your fastball a changeup. That is a big deal for the model. But at the same time, there's some disconnect where the model does not like Gavin Stone as a prospect at all.
Interesting. I have a model-based question for you, and I've been ruminating on this for like a week or so to save it so we could talk about here. And selfishly, it did have to do with the guy that we're going to talk about here a little bit, in Brandon Pfaadt. And the thing that got me thinking, looking through here, because by the way, this is probably the most of any year that I really dug in. I can't speak enough to how much people should check out the Stuff Plus. The sheet is great. That's why you should sign up at The Athletic. I love looking over it, and I think it's a very helpful tool. It's something I was thinking about, I was looking at the guys at the top that explode on Stuff Plus, and nothing to take away from them. Obviously, I look at guys like Taj Bradley and Mason Miller. It's incredible stuff. Even to a guy like Simeon Woods Richardson, who almost kind of toes this line. But one thing I noticed was a lot of the guys on the high-end Stuff Plus are in the 50 range of pitches per game. They're going around 50. So let's say they're getting through maybe 2 parts of the order or something like that. And then a guy like Brandon Pfaadt, he had one of the highest pitches per appearance of any pitcher on this, around 87, close to 90. And his Stuff Plus was down a little bit. And it just got me thinking, how do you weigh guys that are going 30 more pitches per appearance and their Stuff Plus, where they're maybe going a third time through the rotation, or your stuff kind of degrades a little bit later in the game, versus guys that are kind of fresh? You're only going 50 or 60 pitches in, and that's where, the models are pulling from. Do you think there's anything to that when there's a 30 to 40 pitch difference and you see Stuff Plus changes between guys, or is it kind of irrelevant?
No, it's totally relevant. One thing that I think of is the relevance of a size of an arsenal and having a non-optimal pitch, like even Tanner Bibee having this curveball, right? Like the model doesn't like it, but maybe it's useful as just a different look to help turn over the lineup and get further into the game. And then you have the Spencer Strider types who are 5-inning, 2-pitch guys. And there's plenty of those as well. But I think in order to succeed as a Spencer Strider guy, you have to have like a 135 stuff plus. Like you just have to have just like through the roof stuff plus. Mason Miller has a chance. He's kind of a 3-pitch guy, but like they're all hard, right? It's like a hard slider, a hard cutter, and a hard fastball. He's not really like, doesn't have a big velocity band, but he has such great stuff that he could be the next Spencer Strider, as some have put it. But generally, I think you do want to see larger arsenals. You do want to see them go deeper into games. The other thing I think of is we have a pretty easy rule of thumb of taking 5 points of stuff plus off when you change from relieving to starting. So if you are talking about, let's say, here's a starter who has a larger arsenal, Mike Soroka. I mean, it's a 3-pitch guy, but like he's at 101 stuff plus. He's had major league success. He's in the minor leagues. He's got 101 stuff plus. He's going 72 pitches in, right? So he's kind of stretching out. He's trying to use all his pitches, 101 stuff plus. If you had a guy there, like, I don't know who Chris Clark is, or Bowden Francis. I don't know who these guys are. They're around him. And they have the 50 pitches, right? I would take Mike Soroka over them. You know what I mean? Like, you want to almost do that -5 off of them. But if you're talking about Taj Bradley with like a 121 stuff plus with 55 pitches, you can take 5 off of that, in your head and still be like, ooh, still pretty spicy.
Still pretty spicy. Yeah.
So,
yeah. I was wondering where it would be weighted.
The Pfaadt thing kind of be like, he's going to play above right now. He's got a 95. I don't know if you want to add 5, but he's going to play above the guys around him that have 50 pitches. Sean Dubin, he's better than Sean Dubin. I mean, this is the hot take right here. Braden Pfaadt is better than Sean Dubin, who I've never heard of before, or Misael Tamares. So that's one thing. Then there's another thing we discovered, while we were talking pre-game. And this is a big deal. It is something that we're going to change in the model, but he pitches at altitude. And who did DVR? Do you still have those numbers open? Where is he? He's at Reno, and that's
Reno is over 4,000 feet. It's 4,500. Salt Lake City is 4,200. He's pitched there on the road. And by comparison, let's see if Welsh knows the altitude at the place where he lives. How high is Phoenix?
Oh, gosh. I don't. 3,000? 3,000?
1,200.
3,500?
1,200.
1,200. Okay. So that is a huge difference. And that was something,
and
by the
it's
way,
also humidored and enclosed
also,
environment.
Yeah,
right?
conditioned. Yeah, it's also conditioned.
And I was not aware that, and everybody else might be, but it was something that when we were talking about this, I didn't know the effects of what high altitude would take away from stuff. And the interesting thing, and you can speak to it, 3 of those 4 starts were at high altitude and the stuff plus was down. 1 start was at sea level, and it was the best stuff plus on the fastball and I think slider that you saw. And I didn't know that it was going to be taken away from altitude. So now we're looking at a high pitch per appearance and an adjusted altitude on his stuff plus. And it just makes me ruminate more on what is so interesting about Brandon Pfaadt, who most likely will make his debut this coming week. But was it 102 on the fastball in Tacoma in his second start?
Yeah, the overall stuff plus was 102 in Tacoma, and in Reno he had a 98 and an 88, and in was it Las Vegas or
it was
Salt Lake.
I think it was
Salt Lake.
Yeah.
He had an 88. So at all the higher altitude places he had a lower number. There's some pitch mix changes. Like in one start, he didn't throw the curveball at all. So that always changes your stuff plus a little bit, start to start. But the best fastball he's shown this year was at Tacoma, and the best slider. And that does matter because the thinner air, the way that the seams catch, the way it creates movement, Magnus movement, ride on the fastball, it happens less at altitude. That's why people don't throw their fastballs in Coors Field, because they don't move as much. and they just become kind of stinky, you know, straight fat balls, you know. So he's learning in the worst environment, and this is something we've seen. Even Ryan Nelson, who's, you know, hasn't quite come together like I hoped, but is still puttering along in the big leagues. We've seen other prospects come through their system and struggle. And I kind of think also of like Anthony Rizzo coming through the San Diego pipeline, and how he hit like 1 million home runs in El Paso, and then came up and couldn't hit a home run in San Diego, and they traded him. And Yonder Alonso had a similar story too, where it's like, you know, you have to, I think if I was running a team, I would not want extreme minor league environments for my kids.
It's so hard to control that though. It's like every so often, yeah, the lease comes up and your lease is up too, so you can scramble and try to get a better one. It's always been a game of musical chairs.
It'd be a reason that I would want to buy my minor league affiliates.
Let's see, and you want destinations that are close by. Can I just ask before we move off of this? So at the end of it, I think it's fascinating knowing, you know, the altitude stuff. But when you come back and you look at the pitches versus the lower end pitches, the two guys, Brandon Pfaadt and Robert Gasser's another one, playing AAA with Milwaukee. He's got a 2.77 ERA. He's been good, but he is down there on stuff plus a 91.9, but he also has 87 pitches per game. Brandon Pfaadt's at 83. Is the calculation that you might add 5 stuff plus to guys that go 80 plus pitches overall? Or do you think or is it just, you don't even bother with it?
55 is more than a reliever. So I wouldn't give him the full 5, conversion, right? 55 is a lot for a reliever. You know, 55 pitches, you'd be like, oh, that's a long reliever or something, right? So
so maybe it's like 3.
Yeah, I wouldn't give him the full 5. And maybe that's something we can go into more specifically when we altitude adjust, and we're poking around the model right now, as we always do. But I might give Pfaadt the full 5 when you start talking about altitude too. So, you know, if you give him the full 5, now he's got, you know, kind of like 101 stuff plus. Now he's hanging out, and you compare him to people with as many pitches. Now he's hanging out with Luis Patino. Well, he's got better command than Luis Patino, right? Yeah. Now he's hanging out with DL Hall. He's got better command than DL Hall. So if I could sell you on like a DL Hall, Luis Patino type with command, I think, you know, both of those guys have taken a step back, but, you know, that would be very exciting.
With a lot of upside. I think there's still a lot of upside there. And we will see it in full force, most likely within this next 5 or 6 days with his start. And it'll be actually fascinating to compare him and Tanner Bibee, who I was going to say, I think his stuff plus might be getting closer to a Tanner Bibee when you consider like pitch plus, location plus, and stuff plus all together. He might be looking more like a Tanner Bibee out there. And I know that's a big question for so many people right now. Tanner Bibee, Brandon Pfaadt, Tanner Bibee, Brandon Pfaadt. Everyone wants to know, who do you pick? If both are starting this week, you know, are you going with Bibee or Pfaadt?
Do we have any buzz on Pfaadt coming up?
There is buzz. They just won't make the initial announcement. I mean, Dre Jameson was option.
Down.
Yep, he's gone. Bumgarner's gone, and Tommy Henry just pitched, and it wasn't, I wouldn't say phenomenal.
Did Tommy Henry pitch on Bumgarner's day?
He did. Yeah, he took the Bumgarner day.
But was that his turn?
That was his turn, as far as
I've heard that Pfaadt is pitching on the same day. So did Pfaadt pitch last night?
Pfaadt pitched the day after Bumgarner. So he's like on the same train, but he was the day after Bumgarner. So it's close into there. But again, all things
Henry's
considered,
numbers aren't loaded yet.
Yeah, Pfaadt pitched last Thursday against Salt Lake, 7 scoreless, 8 Ks, 1 walk. I think that's the thing. It's strikeouts have been there, walks have been fine. That first start where you get the 4 home runs was a pretty fluky outing. If I'm choosing between just those two, Pfaadt and Bibee, I think I like Bibee even more. I like them both, and I think it's kind of
I like Bibee a little bit better. I don't know.
It's also hard to compare these guys to the guys that have already come up too, because if they were all available, let's say you had some kind of like league where pickups were monthly or something. I'm in one league like that, but it's a keeper league, so these guys are mostly rostered. I would think Tosh Bradley still 1.
Yep.
And then Bibee for me, just a whisker ahead of Pfaadt potentially. Part of what I'm worried about with Pfaadt right now is the way they've handled Jameson and the way they've waited to bring him up. Like, it's made me kind of confused as to how sticky his opportunity in the rotation is going to be with the Guardians. It's kind of easy to see with the major injuries they've got.
Oh, that
stays
up. The
up.
question: what is your rotation if you're running the Guardians?
Who would I throw in that rotation?
Like right now. Like, has Hunter Gaddis is that his time is up?
He's back down.
He's back down. I think that makes sense. Okay, so you're going. It's Bieber, Quantrill, when Savali is healthy. Savali. I'm just saying, like, everybody's healthy. Give me everybody's healthy. What's your rotation? Bieber, Quantrill, Savali, Bibee.
Bibee and Allen.
I mean, Allen is a lefty in this rotation. I think is like pretty key here. Yeah, I think Pat Battenfield goes down. I think it's Bibee and Logan Allen.
81 stuff plus.
I'd probably take Gavin Williams though over the number 5. If Savali or Quantrill's probably last for me of those guys that you named. You know, I think he'd be the first guy out.
Like, he could be the 5th guy. Yeah. A little bit of model validation on him finally. I was right 3 years later.
Yeah, almost 500 innings in the big leagues. A 363 ERA and a 124 whip this year. It's been a different story so far, which, yeah.
Peyton Battenfield, 85 stuff plus. I think that goes with a scouting report, right? Like, he was not high stuff, just good command.
Yeah, exactly.
I think that's the kind of guy that you pick up, that you bring in for a spot start, you know?
Agreed. I was shocked that he was the first one. So yeah. Allen and Bibee have the most staying power. I think it's the most important thing for this rotation, because it is a bunch of names that are hard to justify that are actually better than Allen or Bibee at this point. But Battenfield, I
think with Tommy Henry, you have a similar situation in Arizona. Like, I mean, he had a 6 ERA in AAA last year. I don't want to just use ERA, but, you know, 6 ERA in AAA this year, 5 ERA in the majors last year. And even his good season in 2022, he had a below average strikeout rate. And that's his only good season. The rest of, other than AAA 2022, Tommy Henry in all of his places has an ERA over 6.
Yeah, I mean, he's not good.
Yeah. Even with the environments are all tough, especially AA and AAA.
We were just finished talking about that.
We learned about Amarillo's altitude before the show. Much higher than you'd expect, right? You'd think Texas, probably low. Nope. It's over 3,000 feet. So it's one of the reasons
that makes it hard to just put those numbers out there. But still, I mean, he's at the major league level. He's got 51 innings and a poor strikeout rate and walk rate. So
the thing I'd go back with, and I, you know, it's because of me probably that we talk about Brandon Pfaadt so much, because of the Diamondback person. But but I also want to point out, though, I think it's important because there's so many people, me aside, that had investments in Brandon Pfaadt coming into the year. But check this out: the Diamondbacks within the last week have made tough moves. Madison Bumgarner, eat the money, kick the road, see ya. Jake McCarthy was sent down to AAA today, which was one of my bold predictions before the season because of his struggles. They're not screwing around and doing the old Lovello stuff. Yeah, McCarthy's sent down. And
no, more breaking news.
Oh no.
Oh no.
Brandon Pfaadt out for the year, traded.
This is sad for me. Rays are sending impressive rookie starter Taj Bradley back to AAA.
Oh no.
What?
It says as part of a transition to a 5-day schedule, as part of continued. He had been on a 6-day schedule. I don't know. I think this is temporary. It's 10 days. It's 10 days. Dude, they're going to go with Chirinos and Fleming in the meantime? I don't know, dude.
That's wildly stupid.
I'm hoping this is a 10-day thing.
I do too. I would hold on to Taj Bradley. But just finishing, Diamondbacks, even when you go on roster resource, there's 4 pitchers on there. And Tommy Henry is one of those. It's Gallen, Merrill. You got Ryan Nelson and Tommy Henry. They don't have a 5th starter listed right now. The Diamondbacks have made the critical moves.
So they might need Henry and Pfaadt.
They might need both of these guys. And they have also, what I think, maybe something you could put together, too, is like, we had that start, which was okay. And then he could come up and he didn't. And he pitched the next day. And then what happened the next day? He didn't throw the curveball. And he saw huge results. Maybe the Diamondbacks wanted him to work through a few things to be refined, because I don't think it's going to be a turnstile once he's up. Once he's up, he's up. He's not going anywhere. They're going to make the commitment. And I think it's an assurance thing. There is a spot open there. So that's why I kind of keep pushing the envelope with this, because when he gets that spot, which will be very soon, this week, next week, he's going to be there for good. This won't be like a Dre Jameson situation where they're very kind of tepid about maybe trying to get him in the rotation. But I wouldn't have expected that Brandon Pfaadt would be up and Taj Bradley would be down. But
isn't it so hard to figure out how organizations are going to deal with people? Like, I would say, oh yeah, the D-backs, sometimes they seem like they take rookies and just put them in. Alec Thomas, Corbin Carroll, like,
yeah,
just put them in and play and let them go through some struggles. But then you have Dre Jameson on the same team where you're just like, what's the plan here?
Well, also, like, if they obviously want to stretch him out and get him working as a pitcher. He's better than half of that bullpen right now. That he's not better than Jose Ruiz or Peter Solomon is silly. So he could do that, but they want him to be a part of that rotation. So he's got to work something out.
So maybe he comes back and takes Tommy Henry's spot.
I would think so. Long term, that would be it.
Yeah, and you can control the schedule for him as a starter on the workloads a lot better too. So you send him down for a week or two.
Bradley is down.
Yeah, okay. Let's dig into this for a minute. It's fresh and it's frustrating.
It's also, Welsh pointed out, he was at 55 pitches per start in the minor leagues.
Okay,
but I only have one appearance there.
Well, he went okay deep into games, but I think there's a management workload. What I'm not understanding is we're going to a 5. He was on a 6-day and we're going to a 5. So we're sending him down. Is that simply to get some fresh bodies in to help and for, a week and a half and then bring him back up on a normal schedule?
Maybe
it's just
odd
to me.
Maybe it's innings management.
Yeah. We don't usually see the Rays do that. I don't think.
This is weird.
They would piggyback. Usually their move would be like, maybe they pitch him 2 or 3 innings, like, and they have him be an opener.
Fleming, then just use Bradley and Fleming.
Yeah.
I mean, he's got a 23-2 strikeout to walk ratio in 15 and a third innings. He's thrown 78 or more pitches in each of his 3 starts. He's not going that short. You have a crazy good bullpen. Innings for Taj Bradley, as far as what he threw last year, 133 and a third. You're going to 150. You're going to at least 150, probably more, and maybe you got to save a little bit for the postseason. But you could do that stuff around the All-Star break. You do that stuff with a break in the schedule. This seems like the Rays being too cute. Like, I get it, they're 20-3, they can't do anything wrong right now. This doesn't make any sense on the surface. I'm with you on the hold. I don't think you send him. I don't think you caught him. There's one thing you have to think about. Yes, you spent a ton of money in Fab, and waiting a couple of weeks to get him back is really frustrating. All it takes is one of their seemingly made of glass pitchers to be broken,
Chirinos,
and he's right back up. Or just horrible performance in the back.
Fleming is a very marginal starting pitcher for a team as good as the Rays,
I don't understand this.
Wow.
I'm sorry.
They activated Jose Siri to do this move, by the way. They activated Siri and then they optioned Bradley. I just don't know if this is
corresponding move too.
Maybe it was just like short-term roster flexibility. You know what I'm saying? Like maybe it was just
they
like
didn't
they didn't
have to release Fleming or Chirinos or somebody.
Yeah, there's DFAs that would go in. Maybe they just knew that they could do this. They could option him down for 3 or 4 days and figure out what their next move is.
Figure out who to release later.
Taylor Walls has been playing so well, so it's like what do?
They never want to release anybody. They're like the kings of not wanting to release anybody. So maybe it was a roster crunch they had coming, and so they just send him down, and then what's inevitably going to happen is someone's going to get injured on the staff, and Bradley will come up to replace him.
Yeah,
I'm blown away though that this is the move. I mean, you look at up and down this, they have actually a lot of guys on the roster with options. The only member of their bullpen without minor league options, according to Roster Resource, is Garrett Clevenger. Every other reliever they have has options left, and they still sent Taj Bradley down.
That kills me a little bit because that kind of takes the wind out of my theory.
Nuke's a 2-start week. They've done this to us before. I mean, you just don't expect it with the pitchers. Come on.
Well, especially when they're 3-0, when they've gotten 3-0 in the start
really
of the year.
Yeah. I don't know. What more can you do? So that's the thing. We were just talking about how we'd rank the pitchers. Taj Bradley, obviously first. 2 minutes later, Taj Bradley. That was the plot twist.
We got it reversed this time.
It happened in the show.
Called up.
Everything we said a few weeks ago when we were comparing him to Simeon Woods Richardson, it's come true, but we didn't expect it to come true because everything that happened in the time since then, maddening.
Woods Richardson, I think embodies all the risks that we're talking about with all these other players in more aggressive terms. Like the Twins seem fine with just using him as a spot guy or reliever, long reliever. Like there's nothing about the way that the Twins are treating Simeon Woods Richardson tells me that they have a spot waiting for him.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of depth there right now. That's part of the problem.
They just figure that somebody will get hurt and he'll come up and replace them, and that's it.
It's still
they
pretty.
Even have Ober doing that too, and Louis Varland.
Varland, yeah.
Louis Varland's in the top 15 in AAA Stuff Plus.
Not good for Woods Richardson, but it's nice that he's doing well himself. I think it's the same sort of problem eventually that Arizona has, where you can't keep these guys stacked up at AAA all year. Eventually, you reach a point in the season where there's enough attrition on your big league roster, and even if it's in the bullpen, you got to let some of these guys throw some innings for you in 1 or 2 inning stints out of the bullpen, because you just need quality, and they're your best options. But at this point, from a long-term development standpoint, getting innings every 5th day as a starter is the best way to have 2024 and 2025, with normal sort of workload ceilings. I think that's a lot of what's happening right now as well. This is a crazy start to the show. We're 30 minutes in right now. We've talked about 2 things on the sheet. 3 things.
A lot of theory. We got a lot of theory in there too.
A lot of theory, yeah. Michael Busch is up right now because Max Muncy is on the paternity list. People have been pointing this out on Twitter.
Short.
Yeah, this is probably short. There was a point at the beginning of the season where I wondered if Michael Busch might actually have a better path to this roster than expected. Part of that was, Muncy, if he didn't bounce back, if they had more problems at shortstop, and all the different things, you can move guys around and kind of open up second.
Well, they've had the problems at shortstop. They put Mookie Betts in.
It's working. Mookie looks like a shortstop out there. But is Michael Busch, is he in this group of positionless bats, guys that don't defend well enough to really play anywhere? I mean, we saw Edouard Julien, who we talked about last week, get sent back down by the Twins. He doesn't necessarily have a position to call his own. I wonder if this could be part of the problem for Michael Busch, even beyond, this seemingly temporary call-up situation. What do we do with players like this who look like they can hit enough, but don't necessarily have a spot where they can play initially and carve out that role?
I feel like you got to put them on like a watch list, because I think that's exactly what Michael Busch is right now. I think James Outman put a wrinkle in a lot of like extra opportunity for some of these prospects because he's so good and he takes up that roster spot. He's not going anywhere. Miguel Vargas has had some struggles, but I just don't think from a developmental standpoint they want to do anything. If they did, it actually could and probably would be Michael Busch. He's kind of like a Max Muncy, and he can play around the infield. He's played second base. He can play first. His strikeout rate, he's cut dramatically this year. He had a 26% strikeout rate in AAA last year. It's down to under 19%. He's got a 17+% walk percentage. He's got a 3.45 slash so far this year. He had 30+ homers. I mean, this is the quintessential Dodgers prospect as he's getting a little bit older. He needs opportunity. I think he's way better than like Edwin Rios was back in the day. Everybody wanted Edwin Rios to be, the next successful, and he's going to get time and he hits the ball hard. That's what Michael Busch is in general, and he can play around the field. It's just, I don't know where they do it. I think it's going to have to take an injury or kind of a give up like the Diamondbacks are doing with McCarthy, where they say, okay, we need to retool Miguel Vargas and try something else. Then that would open up the spot. But there is no other spot. And like I said, Outman is probably one of the big reasons why they're not going to have as much experimenting with some of those close to the majors prospects that they usually have, unless it's a case like this.
And even Vargas, I mean, yes, he's struggling, but he got a 95 WRC plus right now. So he's showing good enough defense and good enough offense to be an 8-hitter for the Dodgers, and
he gets on base,
right? Because of that, So the big thing that I would say for him is he needs to swing some more. I mean, he's got a Votto-like swing rate, but he's not got Votto-like power. So if you don't swing very often, and then when you do swing, you kind of hit it softly, it's a weird combo. Not a lot of players have really made this work. Usually the guys who don't swing much, when they do swing, connect for power.
I think it might be the thumb, though. The barrel rate in the limited time he's been up this year compared to last season has been cut in half for Miguel Vargas. Yeah. Average exit velo lagging behind last year. The max isn't great at 108. Hard hit rate 32.6%, down from 40%. he's got a great idea of the zone. And part of this was like spring training. He was just standing up there, just taking pitches, which was really weird. Might have been the function of the World Baseball Classic and having only so many players available to play. But I wonder if
maybe that's why he's
hurt.
not stealing too, huh?
Yeah, I mean,
doesn't want to jam that thumb in the bag or whatever.
The way they're using him, he started 10 straight games before his most recent day off.
But it was just the pinky, wasn't it?
Thumb.
That was the pinky.
So there's something contagious too about like how bad has that offense been all year? They've been playing from behind. They've been struggling. They've been trying to find their footing. Their leaders in Mookie Betts and Freddie Freeman have gone through these slumps. Sometimes that stuff is kind of contagious, and then the younger guys and lower parts of the order have to pick that up, and you get injury and you get just like a team-wide slump if you're not James Outman. I don't know. That might be playing a little bit of a role in it either. I don't think the Dodgers are giving up on him anytime soon. So whatever it is, I think that's astute. It might be because of this thumb injury that's continuously carried over. And sometimes it take like 6 weeks into the year. That could take quite a while for him to get readjusted.
Some other news we should get to. Logan O'Hoppe out 4 to 6 months with a torn labrum. He had surgery. He was off to a really good start. So that's just a bummer. And long-term leagues, short-term leagues, you wonder long-term.
Next year, yeah.
Right. Is he going to be himself coming off that injury? That can be a really big one for position players to come back from. A rough week to be a catcher. Not as severe of an injury for Endy Rodriguez in Pittsburgh, but he's dealing with a forearm strain right now for the Pirates. And I think based on how well that team is playing,
he would have been up by now.
They could have probably called him up. And I'm wondering, are there other Pirates we should be looking at as possible recipients of opportunities to contribute and possibly help them sustain this fast start?
Well, just to throw this out, I was going to say he's a level below, but if the Indies thing drags out, Henry Davis has had a pretty good start to the year. Henry Davis was out here in the AFL. He's repeating AA, but he's got a 20+% walk rate. He's got the second lowest strikeout percentage of any point in his minor league career. He's hitting 267. He's got 4 homers, 4 stolen bases. And, he was one of the primary catchers out here in Surprise, playing for the Surprise team. And, he's a team leader type of guy. This is a guy that I think could be put right in right now if they really wanted to go down that route and could jump Endy Rodriguez. Because I think the only reason Henry Davis is at AA is because Indy's the AAA guy. So if there's any stall, Henry Davis is one of those guys that could probably help sooner rather than later if they felt they needed to go down that route, because it's kind of hot bat right now.
Yeah, I think when you look at the way this roster is built, having Carlos Santana and Andrew McCutchen both there kind of covers your first base and DH playing time. But if you want to bring Davis up to make him your primary catcher, that's an area of weakness for them offensively right now. If eventually, one of those veterans is hurt or not playing very well, I think you could see Davis and Rodriguez on the roster together. I think they can work as one of the better young catching tandems, sharing time between multiple positions. Because there are people that think that Henry Davis eventually will be something else, not just a catcher. He might play more somewhere else because the bat is actually supposed to be that good, right? The ceiling for what he could do as a hitter might be such that he could just move off catcher and play every single day.
Yeah, well, maybe Indy is athletic enough that both of these guys could move around in different positions. I tend to think, like, I've watched a ton of Henry Davis, and he's like old school, scrappy catcher. Guys plowing into him. He's taking pitches, kind of lean in, getting hit a whole bunch. Pretty good arm. I know that some people like maybe Endy Rodriguez's bat, I think, is more explosive, and Indy, I think, plays fine catcher, but Henry Davis, I feel like, just has that physicality to be a guy that can do that 5 days a week, just get beat up back there. And I would think Endy Rodriguez would actually be better to play more like a Dalton Varsho role. I don't know if they'll ever do that, but he could be a guy that's
totally plausible, dude.
Yeah, 2 or 3 days catching
all around the diamond.
Yeah, maybe DH, maybe they play him in the outfield, like he could maybe play in the infield. I don't know what that experiment will go. That's not Henry Davis. Henry Davis is not going to move around positions. He's going to be your
catcher.
Exactly. Catcher's catcher. It's a good way to put it. Yeah.
The name that I have is the same name I've always had, is Luis Ortiz. And I'm just waiting on, the weird thing is for me, Rich Hill's sinker and curve still register as positive, really good pitches by Stuff Plus. The whole thing doesn't register that well, but he has, for example, 2 better pitches according to Stuff Plus than Johan Oviedo has at all. And they have similar overall Stuff Pluses. So that's mind-boggling to me. I think it's weird that Oviedo is throwing his breaking balls better and getting such good results, and the model still says he doesn't have an above average pitch by Stuff Plus. So I'm closely watching the sort of Rich Hill, Johan Oviedo portion of the Pirates rotation, because I mean, you know that I had Vince Velasquez circled as an offseason, guy I would throw $3 million at, because he's always had good Stuff Plus. So I suppose he could just implode like he's always imploded. But somewhere in there, I want an opportunity for Luis Ortiz.
I remember listening to an episode of Effectively Wild in the days after Vince Velasquez signed with the Pirates, and they were just making fun of the social media posts about Velasquez going there.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought it was kind of a joke signing too. I thought at best they would do what they did with Jose Quintana a year ago, get a few good months out of him as a starter and flip him. Vince Velasquez has always had talent, but so far it's only been 5 starts. This is the best Vince Velasquez we've ever seen. If you look at his ERA, his WHIP, everything, his strikeout per inning stuff is all solid right now. Is this the equivalent of what the Brewers did by bringing in Brian Anderson on the position player side? Kind of an unheralded move that's actually going to be pretty important just based on the team needs for this season.
Well, what other thing I liked about him is he's relieved too. So like, yes, he's a guy who doesn't have options. And so at the end of the line, you may have to release him if it doesn't work out. But at the same time, you give yourself 2 chances to get a quality pitcher, right? You put him in the rotation. If it doesn't work out, you get another chance. You put him in the bullpen, And it's not like Bumgarner. I'm sure if you went to Bumgarner and said, hey, we want to try you in the bullpen, Can you imagine?
Wow. Can you imagine? Well, I would pay a lot of money to be there for that conversation about how, the well-renowned Madison Bumgarner, who probably takes all criticism very, very well, probably takes it like I do. So
I really like Jared Triolo, but he's not playing yet. He must be hurt or something.
I think you can watch out for Nick Gonzalez. I just throw out too. His strikeout rate is like absurd, which has been his problem, but he has maintained some batting average.
He's
it's
supposed
up
to be
over
a bat the ball
250.
guy too.
Yeah, well, I mean, but Nick has had a lot of readjustments. He hits the ball when he barrels. It's crazy contact. He did it in the AFL. He's kind of back at it again. They have a lot of investment in him. He does have a double-digit walk percentage. The only thing I think that is keeping him down is he is still striking out at a crazy amount. And like a lot of guys, the AFL, every pitcher was top of zone. They were just beating fastballs top of zone, and Nick was not able to catch up to it.
He's made a vertical bat angle adjustment, so he's got kind of like a steep swing now.
Yeah, and it's kind of, exactly. It's come straight up with huge bat speed. But, he is maintaining some batting average. You never know. He's at AAA now. I think Nick Gonzalez gets some opportunity at some point this year. I don't know if I'd be crazy excited about it because of strikeout rate, but like you said, the Pirates are winning. The Pirates are going to try to get live bats in there. And Henry Davis, Indy Rodriguez, Nick Gonzalez, those are probably the most likely offensive bats that we see anytime soon.
I think we should have a segment once every so often, maybe once a week, but maybe like once a month, about a former prospect who became good much later than expected, because that would be Vince Velasquez if this holds. And it looks like what the big difference is the slider usage and probably the slider itself. I'm going to guess, since everyone's throwing sweepers, that we're talking about a Vince Velasquez slider that's not the same shape as it used to be.
Maybe he picked some of that up from the White Sox last year too. I mean, he was with the, in that White Sox rotation. I saw him in spring training a bunch, working with guys like Giolito and Kopech and Cease. And you never know what these guys pick up in their stops, and pick one guy's ear. One guy helps them learn how to throw a pitch a little bit different. There's some pretty smart pitchers, regardless of the lack of success over in Chicago. There's some pretty smart pitching minds in there that maybe that was the start of some of that big change.
Yeah, part of it's usage. 41.5% slider usage so far this season. That is a reliever usage typically.
And the most sideways movement on his slider that he's ever had.
Also a Pirates thing maybe too, because look at Oviedo. Oviedo is succeeding right now, and he is more slider than anything else right now. So many guys, it's the thing that killed me about Dre Jameson too. Throw the slider. When that slider usage is near that fastball, if it's a good slider, so many guys are seeing such great success. And maybe that's part of the Pirates, because that's now 2 guys with heavy slider usage on that team.
Look at this. This is actually kind of fun. Slider usage across the league. Number 1, the Angels. Number 2, the San Francisco Giants, who have been telling all of their prospects in the minor leagues to just throw the slider. Like they have all these guys coming up throwing 50 and 60% sliders. So the Giants, number 2, and Pittsburgh, number 3, and White Sox, number 5. So, and Mariners, number 6. So that's a fun group. Houston, as a progressive organization, nice to point them out at 9. But the Yankees, on the other hand, down there at 21, and the Dodgers at 24. So,
who's the lowest slider usage
team has done this? The Milwaukee Brewers.
The lowest slider usage of
not
any
replaced
team.
by a lot of sinkers. It's more cutters than anybody.
Yeah, Burns throws a ton of cutters. Brandon Woodruff's got a great changeup that he's been using a ton.
Lauer's throwing the cutter because he's lost velo.
Yeah, I don't know if that's on. I mean, Freddie Peralta.
Some of it is just
sliders.
like, who do you have right now? You know.
Yeah, I think that's a little bit of it. It's not. You need to look at. You would have to pull back and look at the entire org, I think, to have a better sense of philosophy.
Well, that's why the Giants being number 2 kind of makes sense to me, because they definitely have an organizational philosophy on that.
Does Matt Whistler have a team? Because he's probably skewing the slider
the
usage for the whole team. 87% slider usage.
Yeah, but it's one of the things that's kind of interesting. It's like Robbie Ray never looked that good in Stuff Plus, but he also just threw the slider a ton. So it's like, sometimes you can just take a slider with a 105 Stuff Plus. Like Vince Velasquez's slider has a 100 Stuff Plus, but hey, it's your second best pitch. Keep throwing it. Throw it more and more.
Let's get to some other questions that I put on the rundown. And this is the section
3
in which,
seconds each.
Yeah, you have 3 seconds through rapid fire. This is usually where the surprise call-ups come from. But I think our surprise was Taj Bradley going down. Right? We said we liked him more than the other pitchers who had all been promoted or about to be promoted recently. Matthew Liberatore versus Chase Silseth. Who would you actually rather have stashed right now for leagues only in, well, we could say 2023 only, and then we can separate it if there's a difference for you in keeper and dynasty formats. Who do you think is actually the better stash between Liberatore and Silseth? It sounds like you're torn on this one, so I'm going to go to Welsh first.
Well, Silseth should have a rotation spot because I've proclaimed the worst pitcher in all of baseball is Jose Suarez, and it's not even remotely close. He is the worst single pitcher. And someone asked me, like, even Patrick Corbin, I would take Patrick Corbin 9 out of 10 times over Jose Suarez. He is the worst. And that he is not DFA'd by the time we're doing this podcast is crazy to me. So they cannot put him out there again. That's why Silseth is interesting, because he should be able to kind of slide into that spot. He's been good. He's got a 0.9 ERA in the minors and AAA so far, though. 4.12 xFIP. The K numbers are there, but I'm intrigued with Matthew Liberatore. So I think the move you can make right now is Silseth, but long-term, I actually like Matthew Liberatore a bit more from more of a dynasty perspective. But maybe Silseth will kind of balance it out. He is striking out a little bit more, but I think his AAA number is a little inflated in his favor, but he should get the first opportunity before either one of these guys.
Yeah, I'm almost clicking the neither box.
If we can do that.
Yeah, I'm not really that interested in either one of these guys. However, Liberatore keeps pushing his arsenal and keeps trying to kind of develop it, and has almost gotten to league average Stuff Plus in the minors. He does have decent command, and he has a wide enough arsenal that I could see him being a decent back end pitcher for St. Louis, and being usable at home and sometimes on the road. So I guess my answer is Liberatore because of the park, almost more than anything.
Yeah, I think I'd go Liberatore as well, but I think Silseth is someone that people might be sleeping on. It's a lot of S's after the disappointing arrival last year. Yeah, 7 starts last year for a 6.59 ERA and a 1.57 WHIP. Guys like that get written off, and I think the numbers in the minors at AA last year especially were really encouraging. Arsenal's not that bad. I don't think the control is a problem. That should be good enough for him to stick. And I'm with you, Welsh. I think Suarez is one of the worst pitchers in a starting rotation right now, so that can't last. I was looking at his career splits in the bullpen. They're not great. You'd think, a 25-year-old lefty, just move him to the bullpen. He'll be fine there. he'll get some chances there for the Angels, but he's out of options. So maybe a month from now, we're talking about Jose Suarez as someone that is, in fact, looking for a new organization.
The broadcast was like, "Oh, I don't know what we do with him. He's out of options. Someone might pick him up." And I'm like, "Who would pick up Jose Suarez?" You said bad numbers out of the bullpen, one of the worst starting. I think he's DFA'd. He's not claimed, and they can just send him down and get him off the 40-man. And I don't know why you would be worrying like, "Oh, we missed him. We didn't get." Like, I don't understand why he is so insanely bad. It's mind-boggling that the Angels are doing this to themselves.
I recommend having the full. If you're looking at Stuff Plus, I recommend having the full page open on Fangraphs, where it has, if you just click on Stuff Plus, it gives you the Stuff Plus of all their pitches, because Suarez has a 97 Stuff Plus, 90 location. So yes, it says he's bad in aggregate, but with the 97 Stuff Plus, you'd say, oh, the breaking balls are still good. The fastballs are both under 90 Stuff Plus, and this is something that came up yesterday when we were talking about Maeda. It's like, yes, if you look at the overall Stuff Plus, you think, okay, this guy's all right. But there probably is a moment where the fastball just falls below usability.
Second inning. It's the second inning. It's always the second inning.
Look where he throws it.
I meant like a threshold in Stuff Plus. But yes, some of these guys in the second inning can't get past the second inning. And unfortunately, in this game, I think you still need to throw the fastball. So even as much as we're talking here about throwing slider more and more, I think, I'd be very suspect of a pitcher with a lower than 90 fastball Stuff Plus.
I'd be skeptical of anyone who throws their fastballs there. If you're watching us on YouTube, look at that. Look at that fried egg right in the middle of the pan.
Well, that's the 90 location plus. Yeah.
He centered that up right on the griddle, right in the middle of the griddle.
Here, I'm room for bacon in there. Quick starters, bad fastball search. Here we go.
Look where he throws his sliders and changeup. Everything's in the middle of the zone.
It's odd. Yeah, I could have told you without seeing the heat chart. It's
Freeland,
crazy.
Everything's in there. It's not just like a few mistakes. He's made mistakes, and every time he's made a mistake, hitters have just destroyed it. It's that he's just repeatedly in the exact wrong part of the zone.
Insanity. He is the definition of an insanity. And 5 homers in his last start, just down the middle. Down. It'll work this time. Nope, it's gone. Nope, it's gone. Every single time with Suarez. It's crazy.
I mean, the math in me says, locations aren't sticky, but I mean, that's a pretty amazing chart.
That looks sticky to me.
Looks like there's a magnet. There's a magnet in the zone, and it's just pulling the ball.
Yeah, why is he throwing it there? How about a Baltimore edition of a Would You Rather? We'll go to the position player side. Jordan Westburg versus Connor Norby versus also Joey Ortiz at the request of one Chris Welsh. I'll throw this to Eno first because I know Welsh has a lot to say.
Not that much.
I think that Ortiz is going to end up third on all of our lists, and maybe that's fair, but I will point out that he had the hardest hard hit rate of the 3 on RotoWire, and he's combining that hard hit rate with a 17.9% strikeout rate. So maybe Joey Ortiz ahead of Norby. Are we going to be consensus Westburg first?
I think like Westburg, I think is the most exciting of all of it. And he's hitting again. I think he is kind of the top guy, but I think that's more of a long-term thing. I legit think Joey Ortiz is actually the guy that could get the call up first. He's also almost 25 years old. Her hit numbers are through the roof.
You got to see if you got something there first, right?
Yeah, that's what I think it is. So, I mean, you've got Westburg, you've got Norby. They're younger. I mean, I guess Westburg just turned 24 as well, but you got low strikeout rates, high batting average. Last year, Joey Ortiz hit 19 homers, stole 18 bases. He's hitting the ball really hard, good defensively. I think he actually could get the first stab at the whole thing, but it also like long-term for the season, I go Westburg, Ortiz, and I just don't know where Norby quite fits yet.
Well, part of the problem for Norby is that Jorge Mateo's playing so well,
so good
that either you are sending Gunnar back down, which I don't think it's to that point yet, or like pushing Frazier to the outfield some, and just putting somebody at second. In which case, I would say they put Joey Ortiz at second because Westburg is their shortstop.
I buy all of
Westburg and put him at second.
I think they could do that. I don't think that's out of character with it, but he has been a shortstop. He played at college with Justin Foscue, who was like more of a second baseman for them. So his shortstop has been his spot. That might be the play. Yeah, you might have that. It might be Joey Ortiz is more the super util or goes to second. Westburg ends up being the shortstop. That leaves Norby in a weird spot. But I think the original thing you said is, I think the Orioles will look at this as this is a guy that doesn't hurt them. They need to see what they have in Joey Ortiz, and does he have a role long term where Westburg and Norby are probably just a step behind. It might be better offensive options.
Jorge Mateo though, -1 outs above average.
Don't go down that rabbit hole again. Just take your medicine with Mateo. Don't do it. Here's the thing: the Orioles are going to do. This is what I think they're going to do anyway.
Where do you play Mateo if not shortstop?
Put him in the outfield.
Yeah, you can play the outfield if you want to put him out there.
You're gonna have Mullins and Mateo in the outfield.
The Orioles are 15-7 right now. Every team in the AL East is 500 or better, entering play on Tuesday. The Orioles have a large number of major league ready prospects, or very close to it. Right? You can't play all these guys.
That's what I'm saying. Like, how did the puzzle fit?
It's trade. I think it's a first half trade. If you're the Orioles, you've been waiting a long time for this.
Trade Mateo?
For what? Rotation? Bullpen? What are they going for?
Rotation. Yeah. Get an impact starter. I think the question is going to be, which impact starters are actually available? I think the Orioles, they can sort of shop off the secret menu. They can go to a team and make more compelling offers because of their depth
to
than
someone you
most
didn't
teams
think
can.
was available.
Ooh, maybe.
Yeah.
How about this? What about go to the Reds and get Graham Ashcraft? Get his stuff plus with the Orioles. That team is trash. They're losing games left and right, and they make a move.
Yeah, I mean, maybe even Lodolo, because one thing that's interesting about Lodolo is that he switched over to his four seam as his primary, and it's made his curve play down.
Which is the worst thing he could do with that 40+% whiff rate, 46, I think, last year. Just some crazy whiff rate on that curveball, and it's down crazy.
Yeah,
like 28%.
I think it's because he's kind of switched over to his four seam, so make him more of a sinker curve guy again. And maybe the Reds are souring on Lodolo. I mean,
Reds are trying to extend him right now, though.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting to think that maybe the Reds could make a pitcher available for a position player. The Guardians seem pretty stacked with pitching and always seem, like they might be willing to trade a pitcher for would you like how many
problem? They got Rocchio though. The problem is they got like Rocchio and Freeman that are replacements to guys like Rosario. That's the goofy thing. Also, the Reds have
really
a bunch of
looking for a
position players.
Right?
Yeah,
no, you know who needs a shortstop? Who really needs a shortstop and always has pitching? The Marlins. The Marlins need to hook up with the Orioles on a trade.
Shortstop, but we've traded away Marlins pitchers.
What is that? Is that Edward Cabrera?
Actually, though.
Who gets moved? Cabrera?
Ooh, Cabrera would be spicy.
Yeah, Cabrera. Could you do Cabrera straight up for
and the Marlins say
one of these blocked Orioles infielders?
It'd probably have to be like a Westburg. Maybe it's like a Westburg and something for Cabrera. Maybe they have to do Kowser and Westburg for Cabrera and something. I mean, that might be too much
of a pop-up prospect to do this.
Mateo's just
Mateo
and
other package.
I just don't think a team is trading for Mateo, seeing him as like even what we said yesterday about the Orioles kind of having this win by giving him this opportunity and having him get to this point. I don't think a team swoops in and says we want the next 3 years of that. I think the Orioles want the Marlins rather want a prototypical long-term big time shortstop.
6 years.
Yes, I think that's what they want if they're going to make a trade like that.
Maybe trade Joey Ortiz and keep Westburg.
Yeah, I mean, but see, that might not be the move. They probably have to be like Westburg for Cabrera. And then you know what that does too? Yuri Perez. Yuri Perez could maybe start popping up. That's a pretty good mix there, the Marlins and the Orioles for a move.
Joey Ortiz for Braxton Garrett?
I think that's one you could make. I think that's something you can make.
And you could do that in season, and it's not. If you're the Marlins, you're not waving the white flag. Yeah, Rogers hurt right now. Luzardo, I think they want to keep Luzardo.
Luzardo's not going anywhere.
But Braxton Garrett seems very tradable.
Yeah, but I wouldn't trade for him and think that I was getting a ton. I wouldn't, like you guys are talking about an impact rotation piece. Like Braxton Garrett is not that.
Garrett might
Cabrera
be actually
be.
Braxton Garrett. If you were going to trade Jorge Mateo, that's probably the best sort of pitcher you're going to get is a pitcher like Braxton Garrett. Maybe that's worth doing. Maybe you want to keep the kids and move on.
I would try maybe Joey Ortiz for Jesus Luzardo. But there is an injury sort of question mark around Jesus Luzardo.
Yeah, it's always kind of been floated in there. We had a question about an Orioles prospect. This came from Wes in the OC. Heston Kjerstad, I believe is the correct pronunciation.
Good too, dude. He's so good.
Is that you changed the pronunciation? I thought it was Kjerstad.
I thought it was Kjerstad.
It was Kjerstad in the Arizona Fall League, but I'm not gonna make arguments against you guys with your bigger brains. But it was Kjerstad is what they would keep saying.
I think it's Kjerstad then, if that's what they were saying in the Fall League. I've got friends that must be pronouncing their own last names wrong, which is possible. It's Scandinavian names all over in the Midwest. Anyway, Kjerstad is another prospect that is putting up big numbers for the Orioles. I think the question is basically, is there something we don't know about him? Is he just delayed hype because he was sick last year and started slow? And
what is his MLB problem, comp? Right?
He had a heart problem.
Oh, I think it was COVID and then heart. Yeah.
Yeah, hamstring injury last year cost him some time, so it's been a rough go for Kjerstad so far. He
looks so good in the Fall League, dude.
So good, yeah. I'm a huge fan. I went aggressive after the Fall League, and I know it's very dangerous to do, and people are like, "Ooh, Fall League numbers," but like you got to see him on display, and he has an explosive bat. He can turn. He hit for the cycle. He actually was the first time I've ever seen this. Him and Cal Conley hit for the cycle in the same game together, which was just like this wild feat. He had 5 homers last year. He had 6 homers to lead the way, I believe, in the Arizona Fall League. Him and Mervis, I think, were up there. He won the MVP in the Arizona Fall League. He's back here in Double-A now. 5 homers, 3 stolen bases. He's lowered his strikeout percentage to 20%. He was getting beat on low stuff, that he's fixing that. And he's playing some first base right now for this team. I think he's one of the best kept secrets, with a crazy, crazy offensive explosive bat for a guy that can move around, who's just had injury stuff and people haven't seen enough of him. But the top pick has been playing it out. And I moved him aggressively up my ranks when most didn't want to, and maybe it won't work out, but he's fixed a lot of the quirks that we saw from the Arizona Fall League, which were the problem. And he was the best player, MVP in the Fall League last year. So I'm a big buyer on Kjerstad, and I love the first base potential.
Yeah, a couple different ways he could fit into the equation there, and that's definitely a position that I think is up for grabs in the near future for the Orioles as well. He could hit his way into that, and I think part of it, for as far as why he's ranked low a lot of places, is that lost time, and maybe based on defensive value, not playing up the middle. That's an uphill battle for a lot of prospects as well. But if he continues to hit with the improvements that Welsh was describing, probably a guy that cruises into top 100s where he's not already a part of that group. Yet another.
And I got a ton of video if anyone wants to see on my Twitter. You can go to my Twitter handle on the mobile. You can usually search and you can go and look, and there's just, it's a gorgeous swing. It's a gorgeous swing. I think I have a couple homers in there. I might have one of the cycle plays, the homer from the cycle in there. So go and check it out if you want to go watch some swings, from my vantage point.
And I've got a confirmation. It is Kjerstad in the pronunciation guide. So that is the way to go.
But second base is more for the taking, I think. So,
yeah. Yep.
Yeah,
we're going to see.
Yeah, Mountcastle.
My guess here. 1, 2, 3. Your guess for who comes up to play second base for the Orioles. 1, 2, 3. Joey Ortiz.
Ortiz.
I have no.
So it's clearly going to be Connor Norby, by the way. So everybody go pick up Connor Norby. He's getting called up 12 minutes after this show.
I thought Norby was an outfielder.
No, it's second base. You got to think he can play outfield and second base.
They got a lot of guys that can play a bunch of spots. Tons of flexibility as they.
And Norby might have just moved, by the way. He was a second baseman. I'm going to look. He's still listed as a second baseman. I think still playing there on Fangraphs. So he's still at that spot.
Okay.
Jackson Holiday already in high A, by the way. That's one of the other O's related items to throw on the rundown.
Everything's coming up O's.
Mm-hmm.
Sure is. Hope they make some moves. Hope they get some reinforcements on this roster and make this fast start meaningful by getting even
Spend some
better.
Money. Maybe that'll be the ticket. Somebody who's actually expensive that we didn't think was available.
Yeah, well, we'll see. They could take on money if there's anyone with a contract that someone's looking to unload.
You know what maybe people could do? Maybe people could go to the YouTube channel right here on The Athletic, Rates and Barrels, and they could comment under this video with the trades that they think we could see. I think that would be a good way. So subscribe and do it.
Yeah, get us some speculative trades for the Orioles to make realistic speculative trades. Hit the like button. Be sure to subscribe to this channel. If you don't already do that on YouTube, you can find Welsh on Twitter at @IsItTheWelsh. You can find Eno at Enoceris. You can find me at Derek Van Riper. If you need a subscription to The Athletic, it's $1 a month for the first year at theathletic.com/rates and barrels. That's going to do it for this episode of Rates and Barrels. We're back with you on Wednesday.
Thanks for listening.